We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Why wait for a heat wave? Get ahead with a new Mitsubishi electric heating and air conditioning system from Joyce Cooling and Heating, your local Mitsubishi Diamond contractor. Locally owned for over 30 years, Joyce makes comfort easy with expert installs and free in-home estimates. Get tax credits of up to $2,000 and utility rebates available now while supplies last. Don't wait for the rush. Visit joycecool.com now. Joyce Cooling and Heating, where comfort meets innovation.
OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Available. When you work with an expert from the mortgage specialist, you can rest assured knowing that you are working with someone who truly cares about you. Are you unsure about which loan option is right for you? By giving the mortgage specialists a call today, they would be more than happy to schedule either an in-home or in-branch consultation. They will get to know you and your finances to learn more about how they can help you with your loan option that is best for you and your situation. To learn more or schedule your first consultation, contact the mortgage specialist today at 877-411-0123. That's 877-411-0123. TheMortgageSpecialists.com.
IPMNation.com.
Good morning or good evening. Good morning. Wow. You know what? I know why I said that. I'll explain in a moment. But welcome everybody to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Hey, it might be morning for some of you, depending on where you're listening from. And also, too, I know a lot of people who don't get a chance to listen live listen to the podcast version later. So, you may be listening in the morning. Whatever. By the time we wrap up tonight, it'll be morning in the Eastern time zone. It'll be midnight. It'll officially be morning, technically. So welcome to the show. We're diving right in tonight because, first of all, a very important announcement to make regarding the future of Matt Connarton Unleashed. Now, I did already make this announcement yesterday on the television edition, but I'm going to re-announce it today for those of you who don't watch the television edition. And there's an added detail, a very important detail that I didn't mention yesterday. So here's what's going on. So, of course, we have two versions of the program. There's the radio edition, which you can hear 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern, by the way, on IPM Nation 2, and every Tuesday and Thursday night. We are also carried on the wonderful OTR FM, the premium channel on the Ohm Times Radio Network. And, of course, in addition to the radio edition, we have the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, which I always say you can see every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern live on IPM Nation. And then there's an 11 p.m. replay. And, of course, we do get the show up and available on YouTube, usually by around 9 or 10 p.m. on Wednesday. However, I cannot say that in the near future because Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition, is moving to a new day and time. And it's definitely an upgrade. We're going from Wednesday afternoons to Tuesday evenings. So we will be on at 7 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday night. And again, this is specifically the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed. So it's a better time slot, and I'm really excited because, being on in the evening instead of the afternoon, obviously, I think we're going to have a lot more live viewers. Currently, of course, we do have a lot of people who watch the shows on demand via our YouTube and our Vimeo channels on IPM Nation. But, obviously at 7 o'clock, in the evening Eastern time, we're going to have a lot more people who are able to actually watch the show live. And people actually watching live means more participation. So we'll have a lot more callers, I'm sure, a lot more people in the chat room during the show, more people tweeting during the show and posting on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. So we're going to be able to get a lot more audience participation. And I think we'll also, it's obviously going to expand our access tremendously in terms of guests, so that when we have guests on, we'll be able to draw from a much larger pool because, a lot of important people who I'd like to talk to on the show are, well, kind of busy at 2:00 in the afternoon. So that's going to be great too. So it's definitely a win all the way around. There were first rumblings about this a few months ago, actually. John Hopwood, and he figures into this too, and I'll get to that in a moment, but he had said to me, hey, if we have an opportunity to go to Tuesday nights, do you want to move the shows to Tuesday? Because, of course, right before my show on Wednesdays is Ward 13 with John Hopwood. And sometimes I go on that show. If he's talking about politics, sometimes he does a sports show. So I don't go on for that because I'm useless when it comes to anything sports related. But if it's politics, I go on there and he'll stick around for my show most of the time if he can. And so we're going to be able to keep the two shows together. His show will now be Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then I'll be on at 7. So we're still going to have that 2-hour block, which is really cool. Just it'll all be Tuesday night instead of Wednesday afternoon. So we're really excited. But yeah, he had actually said to me a few months ago, he asked if I'd be interested if something like that were to happen, and I said, well, definitely. I've always wanted a better time slot for the TV show, and then kind of didn't hear anything, and then. Last week, I was informed by someone at MPTS, which is here in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we broadcast the television edition from. And that's why, even though Matt Connarton Unleashed is an IPM Nation show, as far as the TV version of the show, we're kind of at the mercy of MPTS as far as when it's on live, because they handle that scheduling. So, because that's where we broadcast from. But the general manager there had kind of said something to me last week, just sort of casually. He said, we're going to be making some changes. We're going to rearrange some things. Would you be interested in going to Tuesday nights? And I said, absolutely. And then I found out yesterday that it is, in fact, a done deal. And it's funny. I found out literally like 10 minutes before going on the air. So I was able to make the big announcement. Meanwhile, while I'm finding this out, John Hopwood is in the studio doing Ward 13. And again, he had Mr. Baseball on with him yesterday. So I stayed away from that. But then, so between shows,
Mohonk Mountain House is the perfect place to disconnect from the everyday and reconnect with a loved one. Rekindle your love with awe-inspiring sunsets, rowboat rides across the lake, or a couples massage. Archery, boating, lake swimming, guided nature hikes, wellness classes, farm-to-table cuisine, and so much more. All included in your stay. Find out why Mohonk Mountain House was voted the #1 resort. Book your stay before July 1st and save. Mohonk.com.
Get 25% off and up to $1,000 resort credit at Atlantis Bahamas, the original Caribbean adventure getaway. There's never been a better time to book. Crystal blue water, family fun at Aquaventure, and a summer of entertainment awaits. Watch Pitbull live in concert and dine in luxury at the culinary capital of the Caribbean. Choose original. Choose Atlantis Bahamas. Book now at AtlantisBahamas.com and get 25% off and up to $1,000 resort credit.
During the changeover, I said to John, hey, do you want to stick around? Because I always invite him to stick around. And I said, we can make our big announcement together. And he had no idea what I was talking about because no one had informed him yet. Which was kind of cool, actually, because it's always fun to give someone good news. So I got to give him the good news. So I said, well, we're moving. We're going to Tuesday nights. So he he was kind of blindsided by it, to be honest with you. But I think he's happy about it. So we have one more week on Wednesday afternoon. So next week will be on Wednesday, and then the week after that, beginning May 31st, that's a Tuesday. So the last Tuesday in May, right at the end of May, May 31st. That will be our first Tuesday. Ward 13 with John Hopwood at 6 p.m., followed by Matt Connarton Unleashed at 7 p.m. I don't know if it affects any of the replay times or anything, but here's the other added detail that I did not mention yesterday on the show. You're going to be getting another hour of Matt Connarton Unleashed every week. So instead of 5 hours of content, it's going to be 6 hours. And this is why. Wednesdays, typically I do the television edition of the show, and then Wednesday night at 11 p.m., that's the one night that we're never live because we just take the audio from the television edition earlier that day and then play that in the 11 p.m. slot. So we kind of cheat there. So, typically we're live 4 nights a week. Wednesday, we just replay the audio from the TV show earlier. Now that we're moving to Tuesday nights, because we have the obligation to provide original content to OTR FM, because we're also on OTR Tuesdays and Thursdays. And because it's going to be, the television show is going to be kind of late in the day. So it might be cutting it a little close as far as prepping that audio. We're just going to go ahead and do the show live 5 nights a week. So basically what will happen is, so you'll have the television edition Tuesdays at 7, but also Monday through Friday, 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern, will be the live radio edition too. So rather than taking the audio from the TV version and using it one night for the radio edition, we're just going to go ahead and go live 5 nights a week. So now you'll have 6 hours of Matt Connarton Unleashed every week instead of 5. So that's the other little detail that I hadn't quite worked out in my head yet as I was announcing all this yesterday. By the way, on a completely different note, Saturday morning on Fox and Friends, IPM Nation's very own Brian Brody will be on for a segment. So tune in to that. If you're someone who is predisposed to watching Fox and Friends, you're definitely going to watch this Saturday morning. Brian Brody is, of course, the host of All Natural Being, the current #1 show on IPM Nation, which you can hear Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. Which it is actually 6 a.m. his time, so he's very committed. But All Natural Being with Brian Brody, great way to start the day. 7 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday on IPM Nation 1, and then there's an 11 a.m. Eastern replay on IPM Nation 2 for you late risers and West Coasters. And I think that's why I said, because I was thinking about that specifically when I was opening the show. I was thinking, I've got to remember to plug Brian's appearance on Fox and Friends on Saturday, and I think that's why I said good morning. Because that's what was kind of going on in my head. I was thinking about that, and it's Fox and Friends in the morning, so good morning came out of my mouth. But I still mean it. I mean, sincerely, if you're listening to this in the morning, good morning. But anyway, so be sure to check that out. Brian does a lot of television, and we're very proud and honored that to have him as a part of the IPM Nation family, and in a short time, a very important part of the IPM Nation family. So, and Jen's the one who brought him on board. So she's brought a lot of great programming to us recently. We're already up against a break. We will come back and talk about a bunch of stuff. I have a whole bunch of kind of quick things I want to try to cover tonight on the show. So stay with me. We're just getting started. More Unleashed coming up.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Om Times Radio. I'll meet you there.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
IPMNation.com.
Summertime calls for pool parties and popsicles, not ants in your pantry. Modern Pest Home Care Green Program evicts unwanted guests before they can ruin your summer. Call Modern Pest at 800-323-PEST or head to modernpest.com because summer's for family fun, not bug drama.
Imagine buying a home and the very next day its value drops 20%. You'd never make that investment, right? But that's what happens when you buy a car. The moment you drive it off the lot, it loses value fast. And don't forget insurance, maintenance, and all the upfront dealer costs. But now there's a better way. Introducing FlexCar, the first ever month-to-month car lease. Drive what you want, when you want, with insurance and maintenance included. Use code FLEX50 for $50 off your first order and start your journey at flexcar.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live. We, of course, broadcast 5 nights a week on IPM Nation 2. Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we're also on OTR FM, the premium channel on the Om Times Radio Network. We were the very first show to ever broadcast on OTR FM, by the way. I like to remind everybody of that once in a while. We were very honored by that, to be chosen for that, to be the first show on OTR FM. Of course, we do broadcast 5 nights a week from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in glorious Manchester, New Hampshire. And the IPM Nation live station broadcasts 24/7 from there. Let's see, we're also sponsored by Ambit Energy. If you'd like to learn how to save on your energy bills, go to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. You'll be very glad that you did. ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. You could be on your way to free energy, and it's no joke. I can attest with personal experience that it works, and it's definitely worth checking into. So also, of course, we are sponsored by the Mortgage Specialists. And like I always say, buying a home, probably the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. So go to themortgagespecialists.com, and you don't have to go it alone. Find out how they can help, themortgagespecialists.com. Mortgage is kind of a funny word, you know, just the spelling of it. It's I'm trying to think, are there other words in the English language that have a silent T in the middle of them? And I don't think there are, because, I mean, think about it. Mortgage, it's pronounced mortgage. You don't say the T, but it's spelled mortgage. Maybe the person who came up with the concept of the mortgage, maybe his name was Mort Gage. So then, you know, you've got mortgage, and then, you know how over time, sometimes words, when they're spoken, they, spoken in common English, they get kind of changed, and, letters get left out in terms of the pronunciation. And maybe over time it just turned into mortgage because it was too difficult to say mortgage. I'm just hypothesizing on this, and I'm almost completely sure that I'm wrong. in terms of my theory on the etymology of the word mortgage. Maybe I'll look that up during the next break. Or I'll have completely forgotten about it by then. Either one is quite possible. Let's see, kind of a hodgepodge of things tonight. I don't have one particular story that I'm terribly excited about talking about, but I do, of course, want to. I'm almost on the verge of just making it an official segment. You know, I've never had my show. I like to keep it really loose. And not really have, you know, like Dr. Kevin's show. You know how on the Dr. Kevin show, which you can hear Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, Dr. Kevin, he likes to have segments. You know, like he has his What a Load of Crap segment and his, I don't know, I forget what the other segments are called. But I've never done anything like that. I just like to keep it loose, but I think I may have to officially establish a rightwingwatch.org segment because I do so love this site. And you can learn a lot about the right wing from this site and how they think. For example, Pat Robertson, of course, host of the 700 Club, certainly a very devout Christian and a voice, a strong, very famous voice in the annals of Christian broadcasting. I mean, that's weird. I think about it now. It's like Pat Robertson. How old is he? Because when I was a kid, he was old. And of course, when you're a kid, everyone seems old. Of course, we have this terrible heroin epidemic in this country. And Pat Robertson has weighed in, and the good Christian man that he is, he has offered some words of wisdom on in terms of the Christian perspective. And according to rightwingwatch.org, Pat Robertson, and this went up just today, Pat Robertson says drug addicts who won't work or get treatment should be left to starve to death. Well, that sounds very Christian. I think Jesus said that too, actually. He's just quoting the gospel. Well, let's take a listen to, I always like to actually hear the sage words of these people firsthand whenever possible. So let's play this. Let's play
Bring
this
it on
audio.
with some of the email that you've submitted. And Pat, this first one comes from Paulette, who says, I live in Massachusetts where the state is undergoing a massive heroin fentanyl addiction problem. Recently, the Boston Herald newspaper headlines read, frequent visits by homeless put hospitals in a state of emergency. Patients draining Medicaid funds, ER resources. In the town next to mine, drug addicts are deliberately overdosing near hospitals so they can be revived by the drug Narcan. As Christians, what's the proper response to this issue? Should we set a limit to treatment, or should every hardworking taxpayer just hand over more and more funds for this problem? I'm finding it hard to be charitable toward the abusers of Medicaid because they're taking money from others who do not have self-induced problems. At age 60, I have 17-year-old twins to put through college, and all I can see is me being punished with higher taxes. Whew.
You know, that's a tremendous question. The Bible says, if any man will not work, let him not eat. Now, that didn't say, if any man will not work, let him go to the soup kitchen and let the government pick up the tab. That's not, I mean, it's tough love. If the guy doesn't work, let him not eat. There are a bunch of people who are just bums, and they're trying to, ride in on the charity of others. And their tough love will say...
All right, let me interrupt this for a second. So in other words, Pat Robertson is of the mindset that anyone who is dealing with addiction is a bum and a loser. So they get whatever's coming to them, in other words. Never mind that I learned recently that I forget where I got this statistic, so I almost, because of that, I'm almost wary of repeating it, but I will. Someone said that 1/4 of heroin addicts in the country are estimated to be veterans who are no longer able to get the medication they need through the VA, or something has happened where they're now heroin users. There are a variety of factors that cause people to end up going down that road. Now, that doesn't mean that taking personal responsibility for your choices is not important. It is, and I'm a huge believer in that. And people have to be accountable for the choices that they make. But, we also have to have some compassion for, sometimes life kicks you in the teeth. And I'm pretty sure that most people who end up in this situation didn't end up there intentionally. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, I've got a pretty good life. I think I'll start shoving a needle in my arm and intentionally try to ruin it. I don't think it works that way. But Pat Robertson, obviously, by the way, I love it when people just quote random things out of the Bible that happen to suit whatever their own personal worldview is. You can justify pretty much any ignorant attitude or viewpoint you may have just by randomly picking something out of the Bible that supports it, because the Bible is so full of contradictions and all this. You can justify just about anything with the Bible. Very, very clever. All right, let's hear the rest of this.
I'm not going to give you something. I was reading an article today about FDR and welfare, and he said that this is like I'm paraphrasing now, but it's like a narcotic that nulls people. You cannot continually give things to people who are down and out. You take away their sense of worth and their sense of pride. And if these people are out drugging themselves, let them starve to death. I know that sounds hard, but that's the way it's got to be. You've got to say, all right, I'll give you a job. Here's something you can do constructive. I'll give you some work, and when you work something, then I'll give you some food to eat. But
I'm getting help, even getting to the place of getting help. If you fill in too much, they don't need to make that choice.
Exactly. But if all you're doing, you're just an enabler if you continue to do that. And I know that sounds very, very hard, but I'm quoting the Apostle Paul. If you don't work, you don't eat. Okay?
So there you have it. I think, I don't know. It's funny too, because in his case, the quote that he's using from the Bible, it doesn't even, it's almost a non sequitur. He's not like it would almost fit, to the extent that kind of nonsense fits to begin with. If he were using that quote to back up his viewpoint about, people who are collecting unemployment, because, a lot of conservatives think that anyone who collects unemployment or any kind of government benefits are, lazy and moochers. And actually, the very first episode, if you go and look in the archives, episode 1, the debut episode of Matt Connarton Unleashed, which was, 5 years ago now, I talked about how, I didn't mention any names, but I talked about people I knew, people I had known personally, who were these staunch conservative Republicans who at one time or another had collected unemployment, and how I just thought it was funny, Republicans who've collected unemployment, because so many Republicans talk about people who collect unemployment like they're just lazy and leeches and losers who don't want to work. And that just kind of, it struck me as funny. But Pat Robertson's not even talking about that. He's using this quote about people who don't want to work, and he's using it to apply to addicts. And I think in his mind, it probably doesn't even occur to him to look a little bit deeper into the issue at why people end up in this situation, why people end up as addicts. And again, a lot of them are veterans, and conservatives are supposed to love the military and love the veterans, but I guess if they're heroin addicts, they don't count. So I assume that's what Pat Robertson thinks. Now, of course, granted, he is a doddering old man, and so, you almost expect him to say stupid things, but he's always said stupid things, as far as I can recall. All right, we'll be right back. We're only halfway done. More Unleashed coming up. Don't go away. We're live.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on Om Times Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on Om Times Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
It's about time they
fixed that pothole,
invented better windshield wipers,
made an internet that just works. Fidium Fiber Internet, starting at only $30 a month. It feels like Fidium. Offer available to residential customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See Fidium.com for details.
Well, I'm ready to make a change. It's gonna be a hill climb.
This is not what streaming should feel like. We're thinking more like... Now that's more like it. With Fidium Fiber Internet, it feels crisp. It feels clear. It feels like Fidium. Upgrade to Fidium Fiber, the internet you've always deserved, starting at only $30 a month.
Time for a breakthrough.
Offer available to residential customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See Fidium.com for details.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at Om Times Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. Om Times Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton, Unleashed. We're live on IPM Nation 2 and OTR FM. Let's see. All right, so we got a bunch of stuff I want to try to get through, actually. So we're just going to see, let's see how far we get. We've been talking a lot on the show recently about the problem of mass incarceration in this country, and I've been encouraged. One of the few things that politicians actually make me feel encouraged, that it's actually entered the dialogue where some politicians are talking about mass incarceration. Of course, part of the problem is we lock up nonviolent drug offenders, which is stupid, and I think the tide is changing on that as more states go to decriminalization and or legalization. Right now, Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker have a bill in the Senate to decriminalize nationally, which I think is phenomenal. But unfortunately, there's there's those who are talking about mass incarceration and ways to reduce it, and of course, there are also plenty of politicians who are not talking about the issue. And then you have Tom Cotton. Now, if you're not familiar with Tom Cotton, he's a Republican senator from the state of Arkansas, and he's kind of considered, I think, to be a fairly young guy, kind of considered to be a rising star in the Republican Party nationally, and he also happens to be a knuckle-dragging moron. And Tom Cotton, this is from HuffPost, Tom Cotton thinks America isn't locking enough people up. If anything, we have an under-incarceration problem, the GOP senator claimed Thursday. Oh, boy. Let's look at this. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, is criticizing efforts to reform America's criminal justice system, arguing on Thursday that the country actually has an under-incarceration problem, even though the U.S. has the world's largest prison population. Cotton gave a speech on criminal justice Thursday at the Hudson Institute, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. During his remarks, he argued that policy goals like reducing mandatory minimum sentences, restoring voting rights for felons, and reducing barriers for employment for ex-offenders are misguided and dangerous. Cotton said, quote, "The claim that too many criminals are being jailed, that there is over-incarceration, ignores an unfortunate fact. For the vast majority of crimes, a perpetrator is never identified or arrested, let alone prosecuted, convicted, and jailed. Law enforcement is able to arrest or identify a likely perpetrator for only 19% of property crimes and 47% of violent crimes. If anything, we have an under-incarceration problem," unquote. Well, apparently he has completely misunderstood what people are talking about when they're discussing the mass incarceration problem. We're not talking about, of course you have to lock up violent criminals. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about maybe we need to stop locking people up for example, partaking in a plant that grows in nature that never should have been considered a Schedule I drug to begin with. But being that Tom Cotton is a knuckle-dragging moron, I suppose he is at least consistent with his own behavior and lack of thinking as such. So we need not be surprised that he says shockingly stupid and uninformed things. Let's continue. Cotton specifically criticized a bill under consideration in the Senate that would reform federal sentencing laws for nonviolent crimes. He dismissed as baseless the argument that too many low-level offenders are already locked up and declared the bill dead, even though it has bipartisan support. Yes, it does. This stuff has bipartisan support. And this is why I'm actually encouraged and optimistic overall on this, on criminal justice reform, is both parties are actually beginning to finally see and understand that there's a problem here that needs to be addressed, and that's good. Cotton said, quote, "The truth is you cannot decrease the severity and certainty of sentences without increasing crime. It's simply impossible," unquote. How does he come to that conclusion? You know what people learn in prison typically anyway is how to be better criminals. So I don't know if locking people up for longer sentences accomplishes anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should be soft on crime. If somebody commits a violent crime, an actual crime, yes, of course they should be punished. But we in this country, we also punish people for victimless crimes, using an illegal substance is a victimless crime. Prostitution is a victimless crime. Gambling in places where that's illegal is a victimless crime. In other words, they're not crimes, or at least they shouldn't be considered crimes. No victim, no crime. Let's see. According to the latest rankings from the Institute of Criminal Policy Research at Birkbeck, University of London, the United States has the largest prison population in the world and the second highest incarceration rate, trailing only Seychelles. I don't even know where that is. Never even heard of that country. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I've literally never heard of that place. It's spelled Seychelles. Seychelles? I'm going to go with Seychelles. Then in parentheses, it says here, experts argue that Seychelles, an island country with about 90,000 citizens, is an outlier due to its small population size. Huh. I've never even heard of it before. At the end of 2014, more than 2.3 million American inmates in federal or state prisons, local jails, or juvenile correction facilities with people of color accounting for a far greater share than national demographics would suggest. Meanwhile, 18 states plus the federal prison system were over capacity at the end of 2014. In Illinois, prisons had 20,000 more inmates than the facilities were designed to hold. Thursday's speech marked Cotton's latest move against the Senate reform bill. He's heavily lobbied his colleagues to oppose the legislation, repeatedly claiming that its passage would lead to the release of thousands of violent criminals. The bill's proponents have pushed back against his claims. Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, a co-author of the bill. Again, this is bipartisan, this movement, which is wonderful. John Cornyn's a conservative, and conservatives traditionally are viewed as being tough on crime. But John Cornyn, he's no dummy. He gets it. So he's a co-author of the bill, said in January, quote, "Nobody is getting out of jail free," which is some of the characterization that is out there, unquote. So he's on the right side of this, at least. By the way, it is entirely possible. It may not be that he's completely oblivious on this issue. I would not be at all shocked, and I'm not saying I know this to be true because I haven't looked. But, and I don't know how hard it is to find out, but I would not be shocked at all if Senator Cotton is the recipient of campaign donations from, say, the private prison lobby, which, one of the problems with private prisons is, they have a higher recidivism rate because they actively lobby to for tougher laws and longer sentences and whatnot, because to them, prisoners are customers. There was a time, I'm embarrassed to say this now, there was a time that I was actually in favor of private prisons because I tend to be of the viewpoint that whatever government does, the private sector generally can do better. So at one time, private prisons made sense to me, and I think that's how it was sold on a lot of people. But now that we know that, private prisons do have a higher recidivism rate and that the private prison lobby does actively lobby in favor of harsher sentences and awful things like mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws and keeping cannabis illegal and all this awful crap. And we know why they do it, because again, they want the customers, because that's, really the customer is the government technically, but the prisoners are like inventory. That's probably a better analogy. The prisoners aren't the customers. The prisoners are the inventory, and the federal government is the customer. Well, that analogy doesn't even really work, because why would the customer be providing inventory? But you know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at here, right? So, no, private prisons are an awful idea. We should not have no part of our criminal justice system should be for profit. That obviously leads to corruption. I'm actually embarrassed that I ever thought that was a good idea. Let's see. Oh boy, I spent more time on that than I wanted. Paul Manafort to GOP aides. Manafort's Trump's newest campaign advisor. Trump's behavior can be changed. This is from Politico. It says here, the newly empowered chief strategist says Trump can win over Hispanics and be a Reagan-esque figure. Wow, he's talking a big game there. Says here, Donald Trump's newly empowered chief strategist sought to convince top GOP congressional officials on Capitol Hill that Trump can compete for the Latino vote, exploit Hillary Clinton's weaknesses, and become a Reagan-esque figure in the party, according to attendees and sources familiar with the meeting. After Trump himself attempted to soothe House and Senate Republican leaders over how the presumptive nominee will conduct his campaign and work to keep Congress in GOP control, it was Paul Manafort's turn on Thursday to try to win over some of the GOP operatives in the party. Facing a room full of seasoned campaign veterans and longtime congressional aides at D.C. law firm Jones Day on Capitol Hill. Oh, Jones Day on Capitol Hill. That's the name of the law firm. Manafort struck a confident tone. He told attendees that Ronald Reagan used to be criticized just like Trump is now for his polarizing reputation within the Republican Party. Hold on a second. Can you imagine Ronald Reagan calling undocumented immigrants rapists. There is nothing on any level even remotely Reagan-esque about Donald Trump. I mean, all these, Republican candidates, they try to grab the mantle of Reagan, but it's just, they end up looking silly. There's nothing Reagan-esque about any of these people. And the senior Trump campaign advisor said the campaign will work hard to court Latinos despite Trump's poor approval ratings among Hispanics and Trump's controversial comments about Mexican immigrants. There's more to this if you want to check it out. Kind of silly, but Manafort's out there. He's trying. It's up on Politico. We got to take one more break. Wow, tonight's going by quick. We'll be right back. More Unleashed coming up. We're live. Stay with me for our final segment. Back in about 2 minutes.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Well, I'm ready to make a change. It's gonna be a hill climb.
This is not what streaming should feel like. We're thinking more like, now that's more like it. With Fidium Fiber Internet, it feels crisp, it feels clear, it feels like Fidium. Upgrade to Fidium Fiber, the internet you've always deserved, starting at only $30 a month.
Time for a breakthrough.
Offer available to residential customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See Fidium.com for details.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live tonight as we cruise into our final segment. Of course, we're coming to you from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire. Don't forget, we're also powered by Ambit Energy. Find out how to save on your energy bills. Go to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. And, of course, we're proud to be sponsored by the Mortgage Specialists. Go to themortgagespecialist.com. If you're in the market for a home, you don't have to go it alone. Find out how they can help. And, of course, if you missed the top of the show and if you missed yesterday's show, big announcement, again, really quick. Not next week, but the week after, the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed is moving to Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Still live, but now in the evening on Tuesdays. And not only is it a better time, because I always wanted to get an evening time slot for that show, but also Tuesdays are election days. You know, very often when there's a primary, for example, because we're still in primary season, although we must be getting near the end of it. You know, the primaries usually happen on a Tuesday, although you have these caucuses that fall on weekends sometimes. Caucuses are strange. By the way, all right, a few quick things I want to hit before we wrap up. Hillary Clinton got some good news, and I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton, but this is something that's actually going to be really helpful to her. Congressman Trey Gowdy, if you haven't been following this, I guess you could consider him the lead investigator in Congress in terms of Benghazi. Which the Republicans have really tried to, there's been quite a few hearings on this. Gowdy has now concluded publicly, has conceded that there's nothing that the military or the State Department could have done to save those people in that tragedy. So that is very helpful to her. Now, of course, she still has other problems in terms of, this FBI investigation, which recently was escalated to a new level, and that's some pretty serious stuff. I don't think she'll be indicted, but it is possible. But that's a separate issue. But as far as Benghazi goes, I think this is, I don't think this is anything that Trump's going to be able to use against her in the general election. Now that Trey Gowdy has come out and said, this is what we've concluded. Another quick thing I saw up on HuffPost. Most Americans don't know Puerto Ricans are American. It says here fewer than half of Americans know Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, a new poll shows. This is always something that's kind of, this is one of those things where, you see this and you have to wonder about our failing education system in this country, that people don't know this. And a lot of people don't. Obviously Puerto Rico is not a state, but it is a U.S. territory. Puerto Ricans vote in U.S. elections. In fact, I believe, did the Puerto Rican primaries already go by? I think they did. Actually, I remember in 2008, specifically, Hillary Clinton won the Puerto Rican primary. Just a quick personal story. I years ago, I won't identify who it was because I don't want to embarrass him. But I've been in a number of bands, and I was in a band with this friend of mine who said to me one day, he had just gotten a new job, and he's like, yeah, there's this one guy I'm working with who I'm pretty sure is an illegal alien. And that was his term. I don't use that term, as listeners know. But he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's here illegally. And I said, well, do you know where he's from? And he said, yeah, he's from Puerto Rico. And of course, I just did the face palm, and I then tried to patiently explain to him that Puerto Ricans are Americans. If he's from Puerto Rico, he's not here illegally. Anyway, yeah, that's always discouraging. Puerto Rico, of course, has been in the news a lot lately because of their financial crisis, and Congress has apparently come up with a plan to help. But yeah, less than half of Americans realize that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. Again, that's just where you go, wow, what's happening in our public schools that people don't know this? Let's see. Yeah, I'm rushing because I'm actually for once making an effort to try to get through everything I wanted to talk about. Let's see. This on HuffPost. Trump advising general defends Muslim ban. Retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn is also open to waterboarding and killing suspected terrorists' families. Wow, he's totally on board with the Trump foreign policy. This is horrifying. Let me read this. Former Defense Intelligence Agency Director Lieutenant General Michael Flynn expressed his support for Donald Trump's extreme national security positions in an interview released on Thursday, including a ban on Muslim entry. But the informal advisor to Trump's campaign, who headed the Pentagon Intelligence Agency under the Obama administration until 2014, strained to define those proposals more liberally than the presumptive GOP presidential candidate ever has. Asked by Mehdi Hassan, host of Al Jazeera English's Up Front, if he supports a Muslim entry ban, Flynn responded yes. He then went on, however, to describe a far narrower policy than the blanket prohibition Trump has proposed. Flynn told Hassan, quote, I support the vetting of individuals and the proper screening of individuals who are coming from certain parts of the world like Syria, unquote. He did not mention that the U.S. refugee settlement program, the way many Syrians now arrive in the U.S., is already among the strictest and most intensive parts of the immigration system. Flynn also declined to rule out reviving waterboarding, an illegal torture technique Trump has promised to bring back. Flynn said, quote, I am a believer in leaving as many options on the table right up until the last possible minute, unquote. Nor would Flynn categorically reject the notion of deliberately killing the families of accused terrorists, a practice that constitutes a war crime. Former CIA Director Michael Hayden has said that U.S. troops could legally refuse to act on such an order. Flynn said of the practice, quote, I would have to see the circumstances of that situation, unquote. This is scary. The correct answer is no. No, we're Americans and we don't do that. This is really discouraging. Flynn explained that he views Trump's comments as a kind of opening bid in negotiations that should not always be taken literally. Now this guy's a natural politician. Listen to this double speak. Wow. He said, quote, read his book, The Art of the Deal. Start really, really high and really, really hard, okay? And then be prepared to get down to where you think you can actually negotiate, unquote. You know what jumps out at me about that? So I haven't heard this guy actually speak, but the way he throws in that, the way he's talking, this sentence sounds like a sentence spoken by Donald Trump. Read his book, The Art of the Deal. Start really, really high and really, really, really hard, okay? Trump does that all the time. That's a tick that Trump has where he'll end a sentence with, okay? And this guy Flynn does the same thing, I guess. Weird. Flynn conceded that he did not agree with all of Trump's statements or positions and that he is pressing the businessman to use, quote, more precision in the use of the language that he uses as the potential leader of the free world, unquote. Well, no kidding. That's some good advice. His blessings for Trump's most controversial national security proposals is notable because it lends credibility to some of the statements that many foreign policy hawks regard as beyond the pale. Yet it is not altogether surprising that Flynn is backing Trump. The general, now retired from active duty, has a reputation for his controversial views about Islam and U.S. anti-terrorism efforts. Flynn was forced out of the DIA chief for vocally opposing the Obama administration's more optimistic assessments of progress against militant groups, including al-Qaeda. He has argued that political correctness is limiting the U.S. in the fight against ISIS, according to the Daily Beast. Fear of Muslims is rational, he tweeted in February, linking to a video with the same name that lists dozens of terror attacks committed by Muslims in the past decades. Hassan pressed Flynn on Al Jazeera English to clarify whether he meant all Muslims or just extremists. Flynn insisted that his tweet only applied to extreme groups like the Islamic State, and he claimed Trump feels the same way. Trump is, quote, attacking that group that's doing that, and he's saying to the rest of the Muslim world, essentially, come to grips with this and help. We need your help, unquote, he said. Wow. I mean, one thing I will say, I'm not calling into question everything that Flynn said there or everything that he's been kind of cited for saying. You know, I do recall sort of the controversy around his comments that, you know, he felt that the Obama administration was being too optimistic about the progress being made against ISIS. On that, he's probably correct. Okay, really, really quick, because we're almost out of time. The Washington Post is reporting that liberal pundits blame Debbie Wasserman Schultz, not Bernie Sanders, for Democrats' division. We touched about this the other night. I'm not going to read the article to you because we don't have time, but there's a lot of turmoil on the Democrats' side just as you see all this turmoil surrounding Trump, there are some parallels here with the Democrats. With what we saw in Nevada, where things got really nasty, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is, of course, head of the Democratic National Committee, who hates Bernie Sanders. She's totally in the tank for Hillary. She's been doing everything she can to undermine Bernie Sanders. She's a political hack. She clearly has already chosen sides. And now her and Sanders have gotten into kind of a public spat, and he is refusing to ask his backers to kind of tone it down a little bit, because they did get a little out of control in Nevada. And there's a parallel there, where the establishment is telling him, tell your supporters to tone it down, just like for the Republicans, the establishment is telling Trump, tell your supporters to tone it down. Now, I mean, it's not a precise equivalency, because, of course, with Trump subtly encourages the violence. Like when he makes comments at a rally where he says, hey, if you want to hit that guy, I'll cover your legal bills and things like that, which is reprehensible. You shouldn't be encouraging that. Not even kidding around. You shouldn't be encouraging violence. Sanders doesn't encourage it, but he's kind of been telling Debbie Wasserman Schultz, just back off. This is what happens when it's rigged, because it's clearly rigged for Hillary with the superdelegates and whatnot. So interesting parallels. I like to see these parallels because I want the turmoil to be intense on both sides, because I want, as I explained the other night, I want the two-party system to self-destruct, which means both parties have to self-destruct, but they have to self-destruct at the same time. If only one of them self-destructs, they will eventually rise again. The only way we can blow this whole thing up is if they both come apart at the same time and we get an independent into the White House, a libertarian like Gary Johnson or some other independent. The opportunity is there, but I'm optimistic, but
We all have eyes that we need to take care of. That's why VSP, the leader in group vision coverage, also offers individual vision plans as an affordable option for those of us who don't get vision coverage through work. And like work coverage, you'll be able to lower your vision costs by an average of $350 a year or more on eye exams, frames, and lens enhancements. Just visit VSPdirect.com to find a plan that works for you, and you'll agree, vision coverage has never looked this good. VSPdirect.com. Enroll and save today.